Right, dears. Today we start with Neetcode. Actually, it's Neetcode. Well, since I'm practically, basically, very new to coding, I started with these. So we do arrays and hashing, and then we move to these ones. And this is what I've done so far. And so far, we are going on a 12-day streak, which is pretty good if I do say so myself. And I'll max out the hearts, I guess. Hee hee. But basically, yes, moving on. Let's get to arrays and hashing. Okay, first we're going to learn what arrays are and then how to use hashes and then hash implementations and all the good stuff. I don't have the premium plan for now. I do intend on getting it later on. But for now, I've solved all these problems by basic understanding of how to solve these one by one. So let's take one problem, and I don't think it blows up in this one, but it's a pretty good thing. Okay, first let's understand over all this. Let's try to understand what arrays are, and then you know how we use arrays and hash maps, right? So starting with what is an array? So it's basically a collection of elements stored in order and next to each other in memory. That's what ChatGPT says at least. But basically, in my understanding, let's say in nums, when you sort this out and give it its own array, is like 10, 20, 30, 40. These are usually a couple of elements or numbers stored in this inside this closed brackets, like this closed square brackets, and each element has an index value. So in Python it starts 0, 1, 2, and 3. So this is the index value I, and this is the value n. So when we convert into a dictionary, it becomes 10, 20, 30, and 40. So in dictionaries, it's key value pairs. So the key here would be the index I and the value n. This is kind of confused. Hold on. Give me 1 second. Okay. And the value here would be 10, which is the value. And this is a dictionary, right? And okay, cool. And also, time complexity of accessing an array is we go to the n, which is constant time to access the memory. And also, we can update arrays. We can just add, like do plus this number plus and then add 50. But moving an element, like as in putting an element in between the array, let's say 10, 20, 40, and 50, you got to add 30 over here, right? That's going to take so what you got to do is essentially you have to shift, go 10, 20, and then put in 30 and then shift like 40 and 30. So if you're gonna append something in the middle or delete something in the middle, it's gonna take off in time because you have to look every single element in the array and then be like, okay, 10, 20, 30 is not been inserted yet. So we go 10, 20, 30, and 40, 50 and make a new array. And then it's gonna add 10, 20. When it reaches this index, you're gonna add 30, and then you gotta add 40 and 50 from the older array. So that's how it works, right? And what else? What else? Well, okay, moving on. Hash map. Hash map is a dictionary, right? It stores as key value pairs, as I already explained. So, hmm. Okay, so index to value. How does this work? Let's say you give like a hash map like nums. right? So it stores the hash map. 1 is 10 to 30, 3, 40. It starts with 0. But like basically you can assign a key and a value to the key, key and a value to the key, key and a value to the key. And that's how it stores as key value pairs. So if you want to look this up, so nums of n is equal to I, which means whatever this would be the value, and this would be the key to that value. Now let's look at an example. Cool. So let's say nums is a dictionary, all right? You assign a dictionary. Oh, let's say count is the dictionary over here, because we're gonna do something for counting in Python. So nums would be the array, which is 1 comma 1 comma 2 comma 3 comma 3 comma 3, right? And then you're going to initialize another one variable called count. So what is count here is store essentially the frequency of nums in the array, right? So how does it go for n in nums? You're going to count. So this is the function to count the frequency. Is count of n, which in this case would be in square bracket. Count of n, which in case would be square brackets, is equal to, oops, my apologies. Count of n is equal to 1 plus count dot get, which is the function n comma 0. So it's a simple Python function that's called count get. uh what get essentially does is it gets this value 1, let's say, and then it every time you go through this you append the value 1 inside count, and then you put the value next to it, which is the count becomes like the index, right? It becomes I, or like the key over here, to put it simply, and 3 becomes the value if it occurs 3 times. But in our case, it would look something like 1 is to 2. 1 is the key, and 2 here is the value, right? 1 is to 2. And this is essentially how you count, and these are like the two parameters, right? This is the value, the number. In our case it's 1, so it sees like, oh, is the number 1 in count already? No, it's not. So you're going to assign a default value 0, right? So what happens in this? 1 plus 0 is 1. Now the count is updated to be 1. So essentially by the end of that line, count becomes 1 is to 1, and it goes again. So right now we already have a value, and that is 1. So counter get n comma 0, this turns to be 1, and then 1 plus 1 is 2. Now the value updates to be 2, right? So this is what happens. Right. Okay, so now that we have like a basic understanding of what happens in that case, the end of this entire this thing count would look something like 1 is to 2, comma 2 is to 1, comma 3 is 3 is to 3, right? So remember that this is the key, and for that this would be the value. Cool. So now that we understood how dictionaries work, we can tackle our first problem, which is two-sum. But the first problem in Neetcode and the most popular problem in Neetcode. Cool. To sum. Given an array of integer nums and an integer target, written the indices I and j such that nums I plus num j is equal to target. Right? Cool. How does this work? We take a number nums which is an array over here is 3, 4, 5, 6, and let me okay, and then the target here is equal to 7. So what we do here is basically go to the Python function. uh, let's first tackle the logic here, right? So we're gonna assign a hash map. The hash map here, basically, as we iterate through nums for each element in nums, we are gonna keep adding that element into our dictionary. Let's say we make a dictionary called map. You're gonna add these nums into the dictionary as we go through the array nums, right? And what happens is that basically to find the target, these two should add up to get the target 7. So that's the first example. So how we do it? How do we do it? The target minus the current num should give you the difference number. And if this difference number already exists in the hash map, we can just return the index of the current target, right? Sorry, the difference in the hash map and the target I, which we just took. So we already know few things in this problem is that each input has exactly one pair of indices I and j that satisfy the condition. So this is to tackle the edge cases, but I don't think we have to think that forward right now because I'm still learning, and so I assume everyone watching this video, if anyone is watching this video, that is. So how does this work? Let's get to the code. So for I, comma, n, and enumerate nums, and this is how you go through the array in Python. So the difference here is equal to target minus n, right? If the difference isn't, so before all this, I forgot to do something over here, which is to initialize a hash. The basic thing, the most important thing, and I forgot. Cool. If the difference in the hash map, then we return the index of that I, right? You're gonna return both those index. Outside this loop, regardless of what happens, we are to add the number into the dictionary, and that can be done by saying calling the hash map the value, and we assign the index to it. So going back to the explanation, let's say nums, in this case it is 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So what happens here is when you say call the dictionary and the value, assign it to an index, which basically says what is the value over here, which is 3. You put 3 into the dictionary, then what is it? I index 3 is to 1. So this becomes the key, and this becomes the value of the key. Oops, I made a mistake. The value is 0 because Python starts with 1, 2, 3. 0, 1, 2, 3. So this becomes the value. So what happens in the next case? You go through the value, you see 4, and what is this? Target here is 7, right? 7 is equal to the current number, which is 4. Sorry, difference. What am I doing, bro? Difference is equal to target minus n. It's all the same, I guess. So which is 7 minus the current number, which is 4, which is equal to 3. So difference here is 3. You gotta check the dictionary if 3 already exists, which does. So diff this equal to 3 is to 0, right? So that's how it says the key and value of that. And they're gonna return the previous map, which is the dictionary. So what this means is basically you're gonna check the map, the dictionary hash map for the value, and then return the index. So this gives 0, the current index, which is 1. So our result will be something like this. Pretty cool. I probably didn't do a good job in explaining everything, but I'm also learning, and this is my first YouTube video. So, well, thank you for watching. I'll probably try doing better in the next and upcoming videos. I know I didn't do a better job of explaining in this video, but I'll think of posting again and again till I get better at everything. Thank you for watching.